All right, so we're going to get started with this module regarding putting together your information for your title report. Now, I just recorded an entire segment and I did it live only to find out that I was on mute the entire time. So, what I'm doing now is I'm going to take some precautions, okay? So, you may hear something in the background. That's because I've got a separate recording going on because I'm going to make sure that I can be heard. All right, so you might hear some echoes, but I got to make sure that the sound is working so we don't go through that again. All right, so I want you to know that we're going to be learning today from the portion of the book, and let's see if I can get you. It's the title research flow chart, and we're going to start on page 46. That's in chapter 4, page 46. And we're going back here because we had some individuals that had some questions, and this is your course, and we've got to make sure that you're understanding all of the information that we're sharing. Okay, so matter of fact, if we could go back to, we're gonna go back to page 43. Let's go back to page 43. You guys, excuse this hat on my head. There is a serious draft in this office, and I am tired of air blowing on my head all day long. So hello, please, and thank you. Forgive me for this turban, but my head is cold. You may see me put on a jacket. Okay, hello. All right, so here we go. All right, so I want to start right here on page 43. And okay, so this is the book we're referring to. This is our workbook. This is the book that we use. Title Abstracting Made Simple. Everybody have this? Okay, go ahead and pull it out. And we're going to start on page 43. Like I said, I just did a full recording and there was no sound. And I didn't realize I had done all that time with no sound. So I've got on like devices around me, and I've got other people in other areas of the office making sure that this thing can be heard. So you guys forgive me for all of that time that I was just carrying on, not realizing that you couldn't hear me. So here are some things that we need to do to compile our report. What are they? What's the first thing you do when you get your order from your client? Okay. Yes, that's right. Plug it into your AR. You want to make sure that you keep an accurate record of every order that you receive, even if it's an update, no matter what it is, you list it in your AR. What goes in your AR? The county, the individual borrower's name, the address of that property, the type of search, the client that's sending it to you, the fee that you're to be paid for that search, the date that it was ordered, the date that it's due. And that way you can enter all of the appropriate information when the report is completed. You can put the date completed in there. And then whenever the invoice, the date submitted, and then whenever the invoice is paid, you can show it as paid. That AR is very important, as we've been talking about factoring your invoices so that you can pay your employees, because that's an issue, especially in this industry. Sometimes it takes clients a while before they are able to pay you, maybe for a chunk of titles that you've done for them. But if you're factoring your invoices, you can keep a steady stream of revenue in order to pay your employees. And so where did that information come from? That's right. Easy Corporate Comprehensive Curriculum for New Business Owners. That comes from the curriculum that's taught in this course. Yeah. All right, so as we're using our title Abstracting Made Simple, we want to understand as we go into the records room. Now, when I say records room, I'm not typically talking about going physically into the county, although in the previous recording that I did with no sound, I showed you an illustration of the index books and what you would do if you needed to go into the records room. This is what we're doing online. So if you're doing online research, You're going to go to the tax assessor site in the county and the state where the property is located. Okay. There you're going to research. You can research by name. You can research by property. Sometimes on the order, they'll give you the parcel number. You can research by that parcel number. The title assessor information for that property. You want to get, if there's a brief legal description that describes that property, you want to get that. Any property tax information in terms of the a value of the property, the land, the building, the total. Yeah, you want to get all of that information. Yeah. And so also you want to pull up in that tax assessor's office the date that the property was constructed. Why? Because if they don't have a deed book and page reference there in the tax assessor's office on the property record card, you may need to research back to find out when that property was acquired by the current owner. And sometimes you have to go back and come forward in order to verify that. So I'm not going to spend time on that now because that was in the previous module that had no sound. So I've got to figure out how to make up for that time to be able to do that module again. We will get to it. Okay, so the previous recording that we did before the last one, I had to do with explaining about the parcel grid and meets and bounds and how to read that and how to understand section, townships, and range and how to understand the measurements that's involved in that parcel grid. All right, so I want you, if you have not reviewed that video, let me know. If you need me to send it to you again. Now, you want to make sure you keep up with the course, because the course has all those videos in it, every one of them. And there's a podcast that we're putting together that will have it will constantly run those videos, those instructional videos. So you'll have those as well, as visuals and as illustrations. So we understand, okay, we've gotten that information. We've gone to whoever, the treasurer's office or the revenue commission's office, wherever they house the information regarding property taxes. And we verified whether or not those taxes have been paid, whether or not they're on time, whether or not they're delinquent, any type of information there regarding that. All of the property tax amount. If they're delinquent, you want to find out not just what last year's property taxes were, not just what this year's property taxes are, but you want to verify the amount from the Treasury's office or from the tax commissioner's office or revenue commissioner's office, the amount that would be necessary to bring those taxes current. You want to that's vitally important. So make sure you get that information. So you've gotten what you needed from those exterior offices. Now you're going to the online site of the office where the mortgages and deeds are recorded. And what do I always say to you? Check with the tax assessor's office so that they can tell you for that county and state the name of the office that houses all of the land records, the mortgages and deeds, and all the related land records. In Alabama, it would be the the judge of probate's office. And of course, in let's say in Georgia, it would be the clerk of superior court. Okay, it depends on where you are. Yeah, it depends on where you are, but you want to make sure that you check to see those records. That's really important. All right, and they'll tell you which office that's going to be. Then when they direct you to that office, that's where you go to confirm all of the information that's regarding the recorded information on that particular document. Okay. All right. So here we go. We've gotten everything we need from the assessor's office and from the revenue commission's office. We're now going over to the site for the land records. Now, what are some specific documents that we want to compile? First of all, we want to understand that our job is to verify not only the ownership history of the property, but to verify any encumbrances. Anything that we can see in this title that's relevant to the transferring and the committing to ensure this property's title, from any past claims. Yeah. Anybody that might come up in the future regarding past claims prior to our search, prior to this last transfer of deeds that's about to take place. It's our job to do that research. Okay. Even for refinances, we're checking that record from that day prior to, right? And what we're confirming is anything that we find on that record that encumbers the property. Right. Okay. That subjects the property to certain agreements that would be valid regarding the title commitment. Okay. So that means researching to find any open mortgages, any easement agreements that are there, any liens that may be encumbering the property. Yep. Any restrictions that may hinder the operations on that land. Now, in the previous video, we talked about surface, subsurface, and mineral searches. We're not going to have time to talk about that on this one, but I want you to know that there's a difference in that research. Okay. So right now, this will be considered a surface search. Okay. When we're compiling the title abstract information, and now I'm on heading towards page 44, we're going to be gathering the historical records. We're going to be firstly verifying the current owner. Remember, if we don't get a tax reference, let's see if I can stand the air. I'm going to take my hat off and hopefully the air is not still blowing. Oh, it was just beaming down on my head. It was like I was right underneath a vent. Okay. All right. Don't be surprised if I put it back on again. I do not want my head to be cold. This is not the time for that. Hello. Okay. All right. Okay. So as we're going through and we're checking for the current deed. Okay. So they didn't give you a deed reference. What did I say? If they don't give you a deed reference, you search the name of that individual that you were given, right? You got a brief legal description from the assessor's office. Yeah. Or from mapping. Assessor might not have it. You might have to go to mapping. All right. But when you get in that records room, whether you're there physically or you're online, you've got a brief legal description based on the parcel number that you've been given. You very rarely go by the physical address because that information can change. That's why we want that legal description. We want to compare it to what's on the deed. So you're researching that name, right? If you're blessed, that name will come up and you'll find the deed. You can compare the legal description that's on that deed with the brief legal description that you have that you've gotten from mapping or from the assessor's office. Okay. But what if it doesn't come up when you search the index, the online index? All right. So that means that if they've got historical records online, like the index, you're going to go, as I explained to you before, you're going to go into that index, the historical index, and you have to look it up by alphabet. And that's normally the alphabet of the last name, right? And the time frame. They normally have a time frame, maybe 1952 to 1956, 1942 to 1948. They've got a time span, and then they've got the alphabets regarding the last name. All right. So you're going to search that online index. If you are following the instructions and you don't know which time span to look at, I always, when I'm looking at the tax commissioner's office or the treasury's office to verify who's been paying the taxes, I'll go back as far as that record goes back to see whose name or who was paying those property taxes. And normally you can get a good feel for how long your person has been entitled and has had a vested interest in the property by looking at who's been paying the taxes. What I mean by that, because sometimes the mortgage company or a mortgage or a tax service will pay the taxes, but who has been responsible for the taxes? So whose name have the property taxes been in for a number of years? Sometimes it'll go all the way back to when they initially started to report online. When it's in a situation like that, always check. And I've told you, when you get your information from the assessor's office, go ahead and record the date that the property was constructed, the date that the property was built, because it may be necessary to go to the reverse index book. That's the book with the red writing on it, and begin at that time frame looking for the name of your person. If you don't find it there, then you come forward in the direct index, researching that same individual's name until you finally get to the date when that individual purchased the property. And when you're looking at the deed and the deed reference, sometimes you're blessed in those old index books that they'll have a brief legal out to the right, and sometimes they won't. So each time you see that person's name listed next to a deed as you're coming forward now in the direct, you've gone back in the reverse and now you're coming back forward in the direct index. And to see if, well, I tell you, it's going to be wiser for you to keep on searching that reverse index, but coming forward in terms of your dates. Keep on researching the reverse index. That's the one with the red writing. But you're going to be researching the dates coming forward from the date that it was constructed. Because you're looking for when this property was conveyed to them and they were the grantee. Right? Some people call it the grantee index. That's the reverse index with the red writing. Right? That's if you're in there physically. If you're online, you're going to be searching the reverse index from the date that the property was constructed coming forward now until you find the date that that property was conveyed to that individual as grantee. Does that make sense? All right. So now in searching the online records, you're going to be looking for the mortgage, right? Looking for any encumbrances. Not everybody has a mortgage. Some people have private mortgage lenders. Some people have land contracts. Yeah. Some people have vendor's liens. And we've talked about that. Land contracts are when the people don't actually have ownership to the property, but there's a land contract that states that when they pay a certain amount or when they pay off that mortgage amount, then they'll be granted the deed to the property. So if you see a vendor's lien, then you need to also look for the deed when that property was actually conveyed to them, because when they pay off that vendor's lien, there's a deed that will be conveyed to them and it will reflect them as the grantee of the property. One more thing. If it is a land contract, you have to let your client know, because that means that those people don't really have actual vested interest in the property unless they've paid off that land contract and been given a deed. Sometimes you'll find a deed where the grantor retains a life estate in the property. You also have to make your client aware of that, because that means that your individual, the person that you're researching, the borrower, they are the grantees on that particular deed. However, the grantor, the one that sold them the property or conveyed or transferred their interest to that individual that currently owns it, also retained a life estate. That means that they still have a vested interest in the property, and before anything could be done with it, that individual that retained a life estate has to sign whatever it is that the borrower is going to sign. Yeah. So in a case like that, they would be a non-borrowing, they'd have a non-borrowing vested interest, but they would still have to sign whatever documentation there is, because they have a life estate. And sometimes you'll find that on the warranty deed. All right. So in searching for the mortgage, you'd be looking through the grantor index, right? Because that's the individual, the grantee, giving the mortgage company or the lender an equitable right to encumber the property. So they're granting them that right in property that they own. So you'll be searching the grantor index for any mortgages. And in this case, the mortgage company is the mortgagee and the borrower is the mortgagor. That's going to be the language on your write-up sheet. You're looking for any mortgages that encumber the property, meaning that mortgages that are not satisfied. So if that mortgage is satisfied, some lenders, if you don't find a mortgage that's open, they'll ask you for the most recently satisfied mortgage, right? Okay. Sometimes they'll ask you for a purchase money mortgage. That they're not talking about a secondary mortgage like a HELOC or a second mortgage or refinance. They're talking about an original mortgage where when the people purchase the property, when they purchase that property, then they were able to get a mortgage on the property. It could be from a viable lender. Do you follow me? But when they refer to purchase money, they're talking about a conventional type of loan. I don't mean conventional in terms of FHA, VA. I mean the type of loan that's not from a private lender. It's not going to be a second mortgage. You understand what I'm saying? All right. That's the kind of purchase money mortgage that they're looking for. And if it's satisfied, they'll want that satisfaction. That's if the property is not paid in full. Are you following what I'm saying? You have to follow the instructions that you have from your client explicitly. So when they send you an order, they're also going to give you step-by-step instructions. You want to follow those. Here's why. Because remember I told you the name of the game is courtesy, turn time, accuracy. Courtesy, turn time, accuracy. Those things are very important. If they send you an order, they're looking for that order back the same day. They're not looking for 24 hours later. That's not the name of the game. You know why? Because now they've got systems, and they've had these systems for at least 10 years now, that can search that title in an automated form, a digital form. Yeah. Companies like One Decision, those companies have automated systems that research the title. And for refinances, sometimes a lender will use those. So you want to make sure that your information is accurate and is swift. You're not talking about 24 hours. You want to be competitive. Does that make sense? So when you're researching, you want accuracy. So when you're researching through that index, you don't want to skim through. You're reading everything that you can on the documentation, on the deed, checking for life estate, checking for any easements that may be relevant, any restrictions that may be relevant. Check the instructions from the client, because if you can comply with those instructions initially, you don't have to go back. Please don't piecemeal your report, because it reflects on the type of work that you provide. And there's so many people that they can choose from. You catch their attention with courtesy, accuracy, and turn time. Okay? All right. So having said that, then you read their instructions explicitly so that you know exactly what it is that they're looking for. They're going to tell you in terms of the mortgage, whether they want pertinent pages, meaning the first page with the loan information on it, or the second page with the loan information on it, maybe the page that shows the parcel number, and then the signature page and the legal description. They might ask for the rider as well. Read the instructions, because you want to give them what it is that they're asking for. So if you send them 25 pages and they've only asked you for pertinence pages, and you build them from those 25 pages, that's going to be an interesting dialogue. You don't want that kind of dialogue. You want to follow the instructions. So back to what we're talking about in terms of researching to make sure that mortgage is an open mortgage. If it's a mortgage that has an open end, meaning that it's a credit line, and it has an open end, meaning that they can get future advances. You want to list that on your write-up sheet. So when you're listing the type of mortgage that it is, next to it, you want to state whether or not it's an open end. If you find a planned unit development that's on that rider, you want to put PUD, the acronym PUD, on your write-up sheet next to the mortgage, so that your title examiner is aware of this. See, you're lining everything up for the title examiner. The easier you make it for that title examiner, the more they want to do business with you. So as you set that write-up sheet up to give a concise history of what it is that title examiner is going to need to be able to go through title clearance and then prepare that title commitment to get that thing out, because the name of the game is timing. Because somebody's ready to close. You're standing between them and somebody's money. Okay? If it's a purchaser, you're standing in the way of a whole lot of people's money. If it's a refinance or a HELOC, you're standing in the way of the borrower's money. So you need to get that information to that title examiner. You want to line up your documents, stack them according to how you have your write-up sheet organized. All right? Okay. All right, so some of you have told me that you have confusion from time to time as to the grantor and grantee. That's understandable, because some of you are just starting out, and I respect that. So I should have probably chosen a different deed. This is an older deed. I got this one because I know a lot of you are not accustomed to reading this. So I'm going to get my magnifying glass out. And if we look at the top of this deed, you'll see there the name with the last name MacArthur. That individual is the grantor, meaning that that's the person that's granting or conveying their vested interest in the property to the purchaser. Now, you notice there the name of, I'm not going to call the whole name out, but the last name is Perez, and wife, that whole name, last name Meza. All right. Those are the grantees. Those are the people that the property is being conveyed to. Now, remember, you always have to list. Most of the time, your client is always going to ask for on the order. They want the tenancy, right? They want how these people are going to hold title to this property. So if you look down further, you'll see the tenancy there. It says conveyed to said grantees for and during their joint lives as joint tenants and upon the death of either of them. Now, the way that you list that on the tenancy in your write-up sheet would be for and during their joint lives. That's how you want to do it. For and during their joint lives. You can also add as joint tenants, but if you make sure you put for and during their joint lives, and don't put the acronym. Don't do that, because that's not going to make it easy for the title examiner. Go ahead and list the language. All right. All right. So far we've gone through, we've abstracted the deed, we've abstracted the mortgage, and now we're going to search to see if there are any liens or judgments that are encumbering the property. Any tax liens. A lot of times on the order, they'll have the last 4 digits of the borrower's social security identification number, because that's going to help you verify whether or not that tax lien refers to your borrower. Okay. In some cases, they will not list that information on the order. And if that's the case, and you see a tax lien and you're searching and you're not seeing where that's been released or satisfied, you have to include it in the report, and the title examiner will go through a clearance process to verify whether or not it's their individual. Okay, because you can't go by the address, because people move. All right. Now, if you see a UCC or something and it's older than 5 years and there's no continuance recorded, you can make a note of it and just say it was beyond the expiration date, because those typically are good for 5 years. And if they don't do a continuance, then it's not relevant. Does that make sense? If you see a judgment that's 20 years old and they haven't gone back in and extended it, they haven't updated it, then that's not a judgment that you need to list in the report. You can list it and then state that it was expired, depending on who your client. So depending on who your client is, but they don't want a lot of garbage that they've got to sift through that's not relevant. They're looking for open encumbrances on that property. But if you miss one, it's your tail. So you want to make sure that you are accurate in your research. Does that make sense? Okay. Again, searching for any liens or judgments. These could be HOA liens. They're still relevant and they still need to be paid off at closing. Otherwise, that's a legal violation, and it's your job to verify anything that's encumbering the property that's supposed to be cleared at closing. So you got to make it easier for the title examiner so that they have the information that they need to clear title and prepare their title commitment. All right, so here's what your write-up sheet will look like. I'm about to end here, but I want to show you, we'll run through this really fast. Okay, so of course you know that effective date is not correct up there, but you're going to always ask the county the date that their records are effective through, and that's you'll put that there. All right, whatever your order number is, all of this stuff is standard. Whatever your search fee is, plus the copies, but make sure that your fee is relevant to the copies that they're asking for, the specifics in terms of the instructions, whether they're asking for pertinent pages or full copies. All right, all of this is relevant, and but it's clear. All right, so you want to change your year to the current year. This is 2023. You want to change your year to the current year's taxes. All right, your warrant, your current deed. If it's a quitclaim deed, you want to identify that there. But if it's a quitclaim deed, then what happens? Because you're doing 100% vesting. That means you got to go back. You've got to go back and confirm when the prior deed, right? And if that's an interfamily deed, you go back. You keep going back until you get a fully vested deed that's out of family. All right. Your mortgage information here. When you get that mortgage, again, if it's an open end, you need to list that. If there are additional mortgages, you see down here at the bottom where there's provisions for additional mortgages. If you get a mortgage where there's a mortgage and then there's some type of development loan, urban development loan, or some other type of loan, partial claims loan, those loans are made when a person purchases a property and they get down payment assistance, that's the type of loan that is. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid off unless they intend to sell the property or refinance the property. And so you want to list that particular encumbrance down here under the additional mortgages. If there are any liens and judgments you see there, or UCCs, because UCCs are Uniform Commercial Codes, and they're a type of commercial loan that may not always appear when you're searching the Grantor Index. So you want to check the UCC records as well, because in some counties and states, they're separate. Now, if you have additional back chains, you have to add an additional page to cover your back chain history. I'm going to stop right here because I try not to allow these to go over 30 minutes. All right, but remember, if you have any questions for me, reach out to me. You already know you can call me from the county. You already know if you've gotten too many orders on your plate, we've got people here that can help you with that. We do charge you a fee per search, but we can help you with it. Because if you are part of our limited franchise organization, so you've purchased a limited franchise from us and you're in a limited franchise agreement with us, our job is to help you in whatever way that we can. That's what the support is for. But now, if you're a land professional and you just reached out to us and you're taking the course so that you can understand the title history, we can still help you. But again, there is a fee that's involved with that, but we can help you and keep you on course. That's our job. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. Guys, I hope all of this information has been beneficial to you. You know how to reach me. Before you make an error or before you act in haste, ask questions. Reach out to me. All right. Y'all hang in there and thank you.